All right, what's going on YouTube? We got a real treat for you today. Today we're gonna do a little bit of a different format, and I haven't done this ever before, so I'm excited to bring it to you. Today's video is gonna be a rapid fire Q&A with the Solar Pro with my boy Eric. Eric, thank you so much for stepping on, bro, and coming on. So we're just gonna do some Q&A, and those are pretty much like a lot of the questions that I get asked multiple times. We've compiled all those questions, and I'm gonna ask a real Solar Pro these questions so you know exactly how to execute. All right, bro, I'm gonna hand it over to you. First of all, I know you sell solar and you mostly do leases, but can you talk about, about the commissions in solar? What is the opportunity? Because most people get into solar because of the opportunity. What would you say are the typical commissions that somebody can make on a solar deal?
That's a great question, and obviously an important one, because you want to make sure that you're getting the best bang for your buck, that you're not getting ripped off by the installers, and that you know what you're aware of. I would say anywhere from like $200 to $1,000 a kilowatt is pretty standard. It just depends on, number one, the company that you're working with, and number two, if it was a self-generated lead or if it was a company lead. So obviously company lead pay you a lot less. I mean, I know we pay our guys anywhere from like 20 to 50 cents a kilowatt for a company lead, and then the self-generated lead, we just give them a red line and then they make everything above that. So obviously some companies will give you better options than others. You just got to find the ones that will make a deal with you and not try and just take all the money, even if you go out and generate the deal.
That's awesome. And I think a lot of people are missing the point of solar in general, is that it's all about just finding the right company to work with. And I always say, listen, if somebody's going to teach you just how to door knock, I mean, that's basic. You get ripped off for most of the money that you could have made otherwise if you work by yourself, because you're not a W-2, you're a 1099 at the end of the day. To me, that's a red flag. If they're going to show you how to door knock, then you should be getting most of the money, not the other way around, And unfortunately, a lot of solar companies do the quite opposite. To me, the only reason why you should partner with a solar company or work for a solar company if they provide you with leads. Cool, training's done in 2 to 4 weeks. What about then? If you're not going to provide leads, what good is that going to do for anyone? It's really important that to build a solid foundation to make people want to work with you, you're going to have to provide something other than training. Let's talk about installers, bro. I mean, I know you've been in the industry for a while, and so talk about installers, because I know working with the right installer or finding the right installer to work with could be a real nightmare. So talk about some of your experiences and what people should be looking out for.
Absolutely. So number one, there's a lot of fly-by-night solar companies out there. And when I say a lot, I mean like majority. What I've run into in the past, when I first got in the industry, I just went with a local install company that, they had good reviews on Google. You didn't really think anything of it. Took me a lot longer to learn than I would have liked to, after I didn't get paid out a lot of commissions because of working with the wrong installers. I learned that a lot of these installers do not have the cash flow to actually install the jobs and pay the reps on time. What's very relevant in the industry, unfortunately, is the job will get installed, and then the sales rep will call the company and be like, hey, I thought I was supposed to get paid this Friday. Like, what happened? Oh, it'll be next Friday. And then the next Friday comes, oh, it'll be next Friday. And it's just really delayed. And the reason why is because if they're not a large established company that's been around for a while, that knows what they're doing, that isn't like just risking everything without really knowing, you're pretty much just putting all of your money on the line. Because what happens is a lot of them, they'll take months after the job are installed to actually pay you out. It's super important. Like, I work with SunPower, and I've never had to reach out to them once for them to pay me, right? I showed you last night, they sent me an email, payment, remittance, advance, right? And they just send it to your email and then they pay you the next day. I've never had that happen in solar except for working with them. And last year they did $1.7 billion in revenue. They've got the money. They don't need to hog it all to pay for their overhead, to pay for their expenses. I think it's really important that you interview a company that's doing serious volume, because if not, you're wasting a lot of your time, because a lot of that money that you thought that you were going to make, I'm not saying a small company won't pay you out. I'm just saying that it's very unlikely that they're going to pay you out on time, and most of the time at all, because that money hits and they had to pay their payroll. They had to pay all the overhead that they had to even keep the business running. If you're not working with like a big installer, and there are some big installers that they're not perfect. I mean, if they have the money and other people are getting paid within that organization, then you will be too. Don't waste your time. Don't spin your wheels. Make sure you know for a fact that that company has the cash flow to pay you. Otherwise, there's a lot of money out there in solar. Obviously, that's why a lot of people get into it. And there's nothing worse, more hard heartbreaking than when you thought you made $400,000 for the last 3 months or 5 months, whatever it is, right? And then all of a sudden you only get paid $30,000 of it. That's happened to a lot of people that I know in the industry. It's happened to me, not that exact amount, a little bit more actually. Definitely learned my lesson, and now I won't run with anybody else except the big dogs.
Cool, man. And then talk about, like, for somebody who's never sold solar before, is it a hard sell?
It's not a hard sale. It's just hard to find somebody who will listen to you tell them about it. Depending on the market you're in, like I'm in Florida, right? So everyone's been pitched solar a million times. Solar, solar, solar. I got 5 guys showing up to my door every single week, right? They've heard it all before. It's all about just finding people that will listen to you. It's an extremely easy sale. What's hard is the work ethic you got to maintain to actually find the people that will go through with solar. It's going to take either a lot of money or it's going to take a lot of action to actually generate an appointment of somebody who's willing to listen to you. But once you find that person, it's all worth it. I haven't had a more satisfying sale in my life than to sit down with a couple and just say that will actually listen to me about why it makes so much sense, and just say, look, this is how much money we're going to save you, and all we got to do is, X, Y, and Z. Walk them through the process, and they're like, oh my gosh, that sounds amazing. Why doesn't everybody do this? You're like, exactly, right? So it's just all about finding those people. It just takes action. But once you do, it's really simple. It's because everything, it's all the same. Everyone has the same questions. They're all wondering the same thing. The more you do, the better you'll be able to answer those questions, and then the more trusted you'll be able to close more sales.
And I always say, like, most of the time, like, people don't object. They just have a genuine question. So how easy it is to make 10 to 20,000 a month selling solar?
Look, if you're not making at least 10 to 20,000 a month selling solar, and that's your full-time gig, then you should just get out of sales completely. It is the easiest industry I've ever seen where anybody can make $10,000 to $20,000 or more per month just from taking action. I mean, look, if you find 2 deals a month, if you go out and knock doors, even because if you have no money, right, that's the only way you can start. Let's say you do that 5 hours a day. You're gonna generate at least 2 to 4 deals a month from doing that. That alone, I mean, you can do the math on that. If you're making $7,000 average sale, all you need to do is sell 2 of them to make over $10,000 a month, which is extremely easy. And if you're really going hard, you should be able to sell a lot more than that, like 8 to 15.
If you want to sell over the phone, which I know you do, what are the steps for choosing a market to sell?
For me personally, I've sold in multiple markets. I didn't start where I live. I started in selling in states that were probably less, that didn't have as many competition. Like I started selling in Texas, Arizona. This was like years ago, so it wasn't as populated. So, I mean, it really doesn't matter what state you start in, just as long as you're going with the company, as long as your install partner is legit. Because if you're working with a company they're going to be tough to work with, they don't install good, they don't take care of the customer, that whole thing, that's going to come down on you quick because you need cash flow to be selling over the phone. So if you're not getting the installs done, they're not communicating, they're not paying you, it's going to be tough to keep that going. So you really need to keep those ads going so you can keep your team filled up with appointments and so that you guys can continue to close deals. I would say, pick a market that people aren't selling in as much. Like you can look at anywhere other than the top ones. Florida is probably the most difficult one that I've seen to sell in over the phone. California is pretty simple to sell over the phone. Texas is easy to sell over the phone. Anywhere in the Midwest is going to be easier than a state like Florida. Just make sure that you know what you're doing in terms of like scripts, the companies that you're working with, and be 100% certain that that's going to come to fruition, so that way you don't have to take a pause on your campaign and you can just keep that going and keep blowing your business up.
Awesome. And my last question to you would be, when would you sell a loan and when would you sell a lease?
So when I started in the industry, it was back in 2019, and all we sold is loans. Shortly after that, we were able to offer 2% APR. It was like 22% dealer fee back then, so it was stupid low. All we were doing is selling loans. Obviously, that's unless they don't get the tax credit, right? Then of course, tired or they're senior or they don't work for whatever reason, lease is the only option at that point. But now the game has changed quite a bit. Now, in the last year, we've sold maybe 3 loans because every time it prices out, it's about $100 more than the lease. Dealer fees are insane. It's like 35 to 45% for a 5% APR, which is just stupid, man. So what I tell the homeowner is what was once the homeowner savings is now the bank's money. So that's how we're able to save you so much more. And our prices, even at the lease, is coming in a lot lower than a lot of these other companies that are offering the loan. It's really about the market. If the market's good, loan is great, right? It's better than lease because they can own their power, right? If you have a product like at SunPower, we have the lease to own. So technically, you're still owning your system. The only difference is you don't have a loan to your name. And then on top of that, you still get the tax credit. All the warranties are still the same. I would say the lease is better, especially right now, unless the market changes, you know, and they can drop the rates down and make it more affordable for the homeowner. But we're saving the homeowner way more money with the lease to own right now.
That's awesome, man. And that was this fire chat with a solar pro. Eric, thank you so much for hopping on, brother. We're going to have him back on pretty soon because he's amazing. If you haven't subscribed yet to the channel, make sure you do by smashing the button down below. And we look forward to seeing you again in the next video.